Welcome to the 2020 presentation from the Washington State Auditor's Office. My name is Megan McFarlane. I'm an Assistant Audit Manager with our Port Orchard team and have been with the office for 19 years. I've also served as the Conservation District's subject matter expert for our agency for the last 4 years. During this presentation, I will discuss 3 main topics. First, we'll take a look at the results of the audits performed in 2019. Next, after having an understanding of what types of recommendations were made, we'll discuss some resources available that may address questions or struggles conservation districts have in those areas. We'll spend some time looking at resources available such as the SAO Help Desk, BARS Manual, and the Center for Government Innovation. Last, we'll take a minute to look ahead. We'll let you know what we've communicated to our auditors about this year's audits and share with you a few more resources that will help you make sure your district is staying in compliance in the future as things change due to COVID-19. As I mentioned, we'll start off by taking a look at the audits performed in 2019 and the recommendations that came out of them. Since January 1, 2019, our office issued 26 audit reports for conservation districts. Audits cover from 1 to 3 years in scope, depending on the size of the district being audited. Typically, those with lower annual revenues and a clean audit history are audited less frequently. We performed 20 accountability audits where we evaluate whether the district was in compliance with state laws as well as its own policies. These accountability audits also focus on internal controls over public funds and assets. The State Auditor's Office also performed 6 financial statement audits for conservation districts this last year. These audits provide an independent review of the district's financial statements and determine whether they present a reliable, accurate picture of the district's finances. No conservation districts required a federal audit last year. But as a reminder, a federal grant audit would be required if your district spent over $750,000 in federal grant monies during the fiscal year. During those 26 audits, there were only 23 recommendations. Our office has 3 levels of reporting for audit issues. Findings are the highest level of reporting and are the only issues that are included within the published audit report. Findings are issued to report significant concerns about a government's control over public resources or significant or material instances of non-compliance with state or federal laws or the district's policies. There were no findings issued in any of the 26 audit reports last year. Management letters are used to communicate issues with internal controls or non-compliance of slightly less significance than a finding. There were only 2 management letters issued as a result of the conservation district audits. And we'll take a look at what areas were included in those in a minute. Lastly, exit comments or exit items are commonly used to recommend best practices or suggestions to help strengthen internal controls. Exit comments are commonly made in all types of entities we audit, including counties, cities, school districts, and utility districts. These are discussed with management and can be good opportunities to fine-tune or improve existing. And when these recommendations are implemented, it can help prevent a smaller issue from becoming a larger or more significant issue in the future. There were 21 exit comments made during the audits of the conservation districts during the last cycle. Looking at the breakdown of what area those exit comments were made in, we noticed the most recommendations were made related to the financial statements. These were for issues noted in reporting of petty cash funds, ensuring adequate review of the financial statements and reports at year-end, and using proper account codes. The next highest area of recommendations we noted were in general disbursements and purchase card use. These recommendations focused on strengthening of controls and implementing policies over providing meals and refreshments at meetings. Recommendations were also made to ensure the district had adequate support for purchase card charges, especially when used for travel or meals. Next, there were 4 recommendations related to cash receipting and deposits. These revolved around the controls over bank reconciliations and ensuring the adequate support for receipting activity related to equipment rental and plant sales. The remaining exit comments were made in a variety of areas, including financial condition or fiscal sustainability, compliance with state grant requirements, payroll, and procurement, as well as a few others. As mentioned, there were only 2 management letters issued as a result of the audits. One was focused on improving controls over general disbursements, and the other letter covered several areas of operations. In this case, recommendations were made to strengthen controls and improve policies over payroll, travel and employee reimbursements, cash receipting, credit card use, and open public meetings. And we also communicated concerns regarding the district's financial health. As typical with most audits, recommendations are made to improve or create policies over an area. They also include suggestions for strengthening internal controls in that area to make sure that monies are being used and accounted for properly, or to make sure the entity is in compliance with state laws. While we can recommend controls be strengthened, ultimately it is up to the board or management to decide what are the best controls to implement given their environment. Later, we'll take a look at some suggestions for helping address some of the challenges smaller local governments face with limited personnel when they're trying to strengthen controls in these areas. Before moving on, though, we want to say congratulations. The Conservation Commission received a State Auditor's Stewardship Award, or SASA, in August 2019. The Commission was recognized for its collaboration with all 45 conservation districts in timely filing of the 2018 annual reports for every single district, as well as its collaborative approach to working with your district and our office during your audits. This could not have been accomplished without commitment and a huge effort from each and every conservation district. So thank you and congratulations. Moving on from the overview of the 2019 audits, the next area we're going to discuss are resources, and more resources. We'll take a look at how the help desk is being used by conservation districts and go through a few things in the BARS Manual. Then we'll look at some guidance and tips from the Center for Government Innovation that may help address some of the areas where audit recommendations were made this last year. Using the SAO Help Desk has many benefits. When an entity submits a question to the Help Desk, it is assigned to a subject matter expert. Our agency has experts for each entity type we audit, and also for financial accounting questions, federal grant questions, and more complex and common areas of questions such as procurement. Subject matter experts receive additional training in their area of expertise, helping them to answer questions accurately based on the current laws and regulations. Using the help desk and having a limited number of trained people respond helps our agency give consistent guidance across the state, and it allows us to see if there are common questions that could indicate an opportunity for additional training or a chance to put together some new resources. It also will help make sure that you're getting a timely response to your questions, as we try to ensure that they're answered within just a few days. Oftentimes, when we answer your help desk questions, we'll include the links to where the information or guidance is coming from, or provide additional resources in case you'd like additional information. And of course, another great benefit of using the help desk to answer your questions is that it's free. To get to the State Auditor's Help Desk, you can access it through your client login with your Secure Access Washington or SAW account. Once logged in, you'll find the option to submit a help desk question under Other Actions. It only takes a minute to enter some key information, and then your question will be on its way to one of our experts. So we took a look at all of the help desk questions submitted in 2019 related to conservation districts. Now these 29 questions were from both the districts as well as our auditors. And there were 7 questions submitted internally from our auditors and 22 submitted directly by a district. As you can see, by far, the most questions were related to BARS coding or account coding. More specifically, how to code certain types of revenues and how to code cost share activity. The next most common theme or subject to questions submitted were related to grants. These were generally trying to determine if a grant was state or federal or a combination of them. Beyond those 2 top categories, though, you can see the topics varied greatly. We're going to look at a few things in the BARS manual now. The BARS manual is pretty simple to find. You can go to the BARS and Annual Filing tab right from our main webpage. The first area of the BARS manual I want to go over is the chart of accounts. As we just noticed, the majority of the help desk questions submitted over the last year were about identifying the right BARS account code for activity. 2 nice features of the chart of accounts are that the account codes are specific to conservation districts or whatever entity type you select, so that you don't need to worry about using an account code that's not allowed for your entity. And it includes a brief description of when to use many of the account codes. So we understand just reading the descriptions won't answer all your questions, and we don't expect it to, but it is helpful to have handy. So I just wanted to take a minute and make sure everyone knew how to find it. So we'll watch a quick video here on how to download the chart of accounts for your entity type. To find the chart of accounts, go to the BARS manual for your basis of accounting. Then click on Chart of Accounts. And then you'll want to scroll down to the bottom of the page and select your government type. So conservation districts in this case. And then again, select the cash basis of accounting and select the reporting level of account codes that you want to see. Now, some entity types have a more detailed account code structure, but typically you just need the prescribed only reporting level. And you can choose if you want to download your chart of accounts as Excel file or PDF, depending on your preference. So while we're in the BARS manual, let's also take a look at what's new. You can always check out what changes have been made to the BARS, to the prior year's BARS manual by going to the Alerts and Changes tab. From there, you can click on the links to go straight to the section that's been changed. For instance, you'll see there a section for the COVID-19 BARS coding. We'll take a closer look at that in a little bit later in the presentation. There was one new reporting requirement in 2019 for cash basis local governments that provide OPEB plans. Beginning with the 2019 annual report to SAO, cash basis local governments reported their OPEB liabilities on the Schedule 9, or the Schedule of Liabilities. So what is OPEB? OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. Like the name infers, these are benefits provided to employees after they are no longer employed for benefits other than pensions. The most common types of healthcare benefits include medical, dental, vision, and hearing. These may be provided through a pension plan or separate from a pension plan. Other common benefits include death benefits, disability, life insurance, and long-term care. These other types of benefits are only considered OPEB when they're provided separately from a pension plan. The most common OPEB benefits provided by local governments are PEB benefits, or PEBB. PEB benefits stands for Public Employees Benefits Board. Participating employers in the state's PEB plan provide other post-employment benefits through the plan's subsidies for retirees. The OPEB plan is generally the most common plan we see provided in local governments in Washington. LEF 1 benefits, or law enforcement officers benefits, are also common in Washington, but wouldn't be applicable to conservation districts. So if you believe your district provides OPEB through any other plans, or are uncertain if your plan qualifies as OPEB, please contact the SAO Help Desk so we can help you make sure you're meeting the new reporting requirements. To find more information about OPEB and the details of the new reporting requirements, go to the BARS and annual filing drop-down list, then select Cash Basis, Other Post-Employment Benefits. This will provide you links to additional information on OPEB in the BARS Manual, as well as templates for the schedule of liabilities and note disclosures that you'll need to include to report your OPEB plan information. Okay, let's check in on where we are. We've looked at how conservation districts are using the help desk and some of the advantages of it. We've learned about how to download the chart of accounts and the OPEB reporting changes in the BARS Manual. Now let's spend some time in the Center for Government Innovation, taking a look at some of the resources designed to help entities deal with common issues, emerging risks such as cybercrime, and a quick overview of the Financial Intelligence Tool, or FIT. The Center's page at SAO is about helping local governments find innovative ways to improve government and ultimately help the people they serve. These include lean services, financial management services like resources and collaborative advice and trainings, and financial data tools and education. Let's take a closer look at some of the resources and advice SAO can offer that conservation districts may benefit from. Over the next few slides, we're going to discuss some handouts, checklists, and tips to help address some of the areas where we made exit comments last year. To find them, first you go to the Center for Government Innovation, which is under the Improving Government tab. And then you click on Resources Database on the left side of the screen, where that green arrow is pointing. The first resource we'll talk about that smaller governments find helpful is the checklist for preparing and reviewing cash basis financial statements. This checklist will walk you through some of the key steps to perform before preparing the financial statements at year-end. It also gives some helpful tips and best practices of things to look for when you're reviewing the financial statements, notes, and supplemental schedules. Third-party receipting involves the collection of electronic payments by credit or debit cards or ACH transactions by a provider other than the district. Many districts use these third-party vendors for online sales for plant sales or accepting credit or debit cards for payments at the plant sales. The requirements associated with using these third-party receipting vendors can be complicated. So this guidance is intended to assist local governments to ensure that public funds are safeguarded and deposited on time when you're using these types of vendors. Some of the exit comments included recommendations to create or improve policies for the use of credit cards, or ensuring purchases made with credit cards are adequately supported to prove they're for allowable purchases. If your district uses credit cards or is thinking of starting to use them, make sure to check out the new handout for best practices for credit card programs. Another area we saw several exit comments in was for travel expenditures. Again, recommendations included improving policies and improving the controls over expenditures related to travel to help show they're allowable and approved. The best practices for travel expenditures handout includes 21 tips that will help districts do this. The last two resources I wanted to tell you about from the resource database in the Center for Government Innovation are about segregation of duties and safeguarding small and attractive assets. In general, most conservation districts have a limited number of staff to perform key financial activities, including cash receipting, paying accounts payable, processing payroll, and performing month-end financial reconciliations and reports. So how do you have one person prepare the receipt, another deposit the money, a third reconcile the bank statement, and a fourth review the reconciliation when you only have one or maybe two people available to do all those steps? That's the challenge many small governments face. In September 2019, our agency released the Segregation of Duties Essential Internal Controls Guide to help answer some of these questions. The guide goes over why it's important to try to segregate incompatible duties, how to identify those processes that need changed, and gives some helpful hints for accomplishing this in small governments. Lastly, if you haven't read through the best practices for internal controls over small and attractive assets, check it out. There weren't many exit comments made in this area, but I think it is an area where there's always room for improvement. Conservation districts are unique in that small equipment and tools can be loaned out to the public to use for projects. Also, many of the tools and equipment used regularly for projects are both hard to identify or mark, and they're highly susceptible to theft or loss. This handout will talk about why controls over these assets are important and give some best practice tips for tracking them. So again, all those handouts, training, tips, and best practice guidance that we just discussed can be found in the Center for Government Innovation in the resources database. If you can't find it after this presentation, or if you can't find the specific handout that you're looking for, feel free to email me and I can send any of those handouts to you directly. Another section you may want to check out in the center is the new Be Cyber Smart page. Right now, as our operations are becoming more digital by the minute, it's more important than ever to be cyber smart. Local governments of all sizes are getting attacked by cyber criminals and from all angles. Whether it's redirecting vendor payments or employee paychecks or installing ransomware on your computer system, cybercrime can be devastating and costly to both your district and your employees. The good news is everyone can do something to minimize the threats. On the Be Cyber Smart page, there are links to the Audit Connection blog, where there's even more cybersecurity resources and free training available. When dealing with cybersecurity, everyone in your organization has an important role. If you continue to scroll down the Cyber Smart page on our website, we break down how some of the key players in an organization can minimize and even prevent cyber attacks. For each role, there are downloadable handouts that have tips on some of the basic steps and information to consider in strengthening cybersecurity in your district. The last tool in the Center for Government Innovation we're going to discuss today is the Financial Intelligence Tool, or FIT. Using our interactive map and database, users can access large amounts of a wide variety of financial information about local governments in Washington. You can see how similar governments and government types compare to one another, as well as evaluate trends in your own information. The redesigned tool presents all of this information in an easy to understand visual format that anyone can follow. So there's a few ways to access FIT. If you hover over the Reports and Data tab, you'll find a direct link to the Financial Intelligence Tool. Another option for accessing it is from the Center for Government Innovation that we've been exploring. From the center, which is under the Improving Government tab, you can click on Financial Intelligence Tool in the blue box at the bottom. I've marked these two ways on this page with the green arrows. Another way that isn't shown here is to log into your online services account on our website. This is the same place you log in to submit your annual financial reports to SAO. And after logging in, you'll see a link to FIT up at the top. So let's watch a short video on different ways to explore FIT. Once you're in FIT, there's a few ways you can search for data. You can click on Explore Data or Find a Government. Using the Explore Data option, you can see the data for individual government or totals by entity type. Using the Find a Government option, you can search for a government by either using the map or searching for the entity name. And now we'll watch one more short video and we're going to walk through an example of a FIT report. So we're going to use Snohomish as an example. At the top, you can click on Generate Tear Sheet to generate a one-page handout of all the information. Scrolling down, you'll find entity information like the filing timeliness, location, website address, basis of accounting, etc. The next section shows the total revenues and expenditures reported in your last annual filing. Then it shows the financial health indicators. These indicators compare a few basic financial ratios to our recommended thresholds, and you can click on any of them to see the data used and a brief explanation. The finances at a glance again shows the revenues and expenditures for the year. And then under Explored Data Stories, the user can watch a short YouTube video about where does local government money come from and where does it go. Next, FIT compares the entity to all the others of the same entity type for things like total revenues and expenditures. And under Governmental Services, it breaks down the revenues by source, such as charges for goods and services, and breaks down the expenditures by purpose. You can also see the trends for these amounts if you'd like. Lastly, it shows the breakdown of revenues and expenditures, but by percentage, and it compares the entity's percentages to statewide percentages for that same entity type. So most governments say they appreciate FIT, but we have heard some concerns about the financial health indicators. Having a particular outlook does not necessarily indicate financial stability or stress. We design the indicators to alert viewers to potential financial health concerns by comparing the ratios to our recommended thresholds. This is really just a starting point though. In many cases, further inquiries is recommended, and it's important to point out that governments may have measures different than our guidelines. So now what? Well, now or after this conference, we want you to check out your district's information in FIT if you haven't already. If the financial health indicators give you concern, look at the source data behind the indicator in the Data and Formula tab. Next, determine if the data driving the indicator is accurate. If you find that there's an error, you can resubmit your Schedule 1 or ask SAO for help doing so. If the data is accurate, consider why does it look this way? Is it because of a one-time event or unusually large expense? Or maybe there was a loss of funding that you normally received in prior years. Prepare an explanation ahead of time to answer questions in case your board, the public, or the auditor have questions about it. And be proactive. Make the indicators the beginning of conversations to engage and educate the public. Last, let us know if there's something else that you think would be helpful to add to FIT. What other ratios or analysis is your board or the public always asking you for? So we've looked back at the results of the 2019 audits. We've talked about the resources to start using now to make your jobs easier and improve operations. Now let's spend the last few minutes of this presentation looking ahead. We'll go over a few points we've communicated to the auditors that will be doing your audits this year, and then share a few resources that might help you stay in compliance while dealing with changes from COVID-19. Over the last few years, we've emphasized that the auditors need to contact the district's regional manager as far in advance as possible to invite him or her to any entrance or exit conferences. We've also asked auditors to wait to start all audits of conservation districts until after July 1, if at all possible. This continues to be an emphasis in our planning guide that all auditors review before doing a conservation district audit. We also continue to keep audit budgets of conservation districts aligned across the state, of course, taking into consideration what type of audit is needed, such as accountability or financial, and how many years are included in the audit scope. Please keep in mind, though, these initial budgets are set assuming a clean and smooth audit and could certainly increase if there were audit issues identified during the current audit or if the entity has a history of audit issues. Staying in compliance during this pandemic. These unprecedented times have caused some unprecedented changes to the way we're all conducting business. The impact to local governments, including conservation districts, are still being identified and measured, and no one's truly going to know the impact this pandemic will have on our local governments for several years to come. Yet, you have to continue on today. You have to keep providing services and supporting your employees and your communities each day, even if you don't know what changes tomorrow will bring. Our agency, along with several others, including MRSC, have been listening to the challenges you all are facing, trying to adapt to working in a remote or socially distanced world while still staying in compliance with the myriad of laws, regulations, and policies that govern conservation districts. So I wanted to share with you some of the resources that we've identified that may help guide you during these times so that you can continue to stay in compliance. The first is a page on our website. Our office has created a single page, a one-stop shop for information about accounting and reporting changes related to COVID-19. On it, you can find the most current information on things such as which GASBs have been postponed and what effect that has on accounting and reporting for you. You'll also find information on how to code federal stimulus monies if you receive them, as well as recommendations for tracking COVID-19 expenses. Lastly, we've also given an example note discussing the pandemic to include in your 2019 notes to the financial statements. Including this note will help ensure your entity is meeting its subsequent event disclosure requirements. If you've already submitted your 2019 annual report to our office, but did not include this subsequent event note in your notes, it's not too late. You can open your filing submission and resubmit the revised notes. Also, if you haven't checked out this page, I encourage you to do so. The page and the information linked on it is being updated frequently, so make sure to check back often as new information is coming forward and new recommendations are being made. Another great resource for helping you make sure you stay in compliance while still making the changes you need to your way of business is the Municipal Research and Services Center, or MRSC. The MRSC collaborates with governments as well as legal groups and provides free resources to local governments. They have a growing list of frequently asked questions and a lot of information, sample documents, and sample policies related to COVID-19 issues. We highly recommend checking out information they've gathered and recommendations they have for dealing with operations and personnel issues. There's been a lot of questions that come up regarding telecommuting, remote board meetings, and pay and leave issues. Some other areas that may be helpful include information that you can find in the local government fiscal impacts and the local emergency declarations and authority sections. just a few of the areas they have guidance on. Plus, this page is also being updated frequently, so keep checking back as questions come up. Speaking of questions, we have discussed a lot of resources available to you, but I'm sure there's still more out there that you may want. So after this presentation, let us know if you have any questions or if you have any suggestions for more training or resources you think would be helpful. Maybe a best practice, an in-depth guide, or a training that you'd like to see. There's a chance it may already be out there somewhere, and we would love to help you find it. And if it isn't out there already, then maybe it should be. So thank you again so much for listening to our presentation. Please feel free to email or call either myself or Jenny Waltman. Jenny is the program manager and our Team Tri-Cities manager. You can email or call us if you have any questions. We look forward to hopefully seeing you in person next year.